Well, we've certainly brought in a lot of different measures. The army coming in to familiarise themselves with the distribution is the 18th separate measure we've taken. And of course, a lot of petrol's now being transferred into people's cars. And there are now the first very tentative signs of stabilisation in the forecourt storage, which won't be reflected in the queues as yet. But it's the first time we've seen more petrol in the petrol stations itself. I think, as the industry said yesterday, the sooner we can all return to our normal buying habits, the sooner the situation will return to normal. And we all need to play our part, and certainly don't do things like bring water bottles to petrol stations. It's dangerous and extremely unhelpful.
You announced yesterday that the army were going to be put on standby. Isn't this a little bit late, given that you're already suggesting that you're seeing the sort of green shoots of things getting better, that you've waited too long to make that step?
Well, there's a series of escalations that you go through with a crisis like this, and we've already put 18 different steps in place, which I should say stretch right the way back to the spring, remembering that this problem is almost entirely caused by coronavirus and the inability during lockdowns to test new HGV drivers. So we lost 30,000 HGV drivers through that process. So since April, we put in numerous different measures, 18 in total, with the 18th being the army being put on standby, and they're familiarizing themselves with the distribution system. But primarily, as we all return to our normal buying habits, and as we're now starting to see with so much petrol transferred to car tanks in the last few days, there's nowhere else for that petrol to go, and we're starting to see very tentative signs of stabilisation of the amount of fuel under the forecourt, though that won't yet reflect itself in queues, but will start to reflect itself over the coming days and fewer stations being closed.
The fact that you've taken 18 steps and now escalated it to the point of introducing the army, doesn't that suggest that the public don't trust you, that you've had to get to this stage to try and reassure them?
I think it's important to know that coronavirus has created a shortage of lorry drivers, tanker drivers throughout the world. For example, in Poland, there's 123,000 shortage, Germany 60,000 shortage, America, so it's the worst crisis they've ever had. It's impacting on everyone. The system was just about coping up until last weekend, and it would have been capable of continuing to do so. Unfortunately, as we've seen with toilet rolls and other things, once people start to pursue a particular item, it can quickly escalate. But as I say, there's only so much petrol you can transfer into tanks. That is starting to work its way through. I do appeal to everyone. Once we all return to our normal buying habits and stop trying to top up our vehicles, certainly don't bring plastic water bottles to fill up. It's unhelpful. It's dangerous. The sooner that happens, the quicker we get back to normality. And this tentative stabilisation in the amount of stock at forecourts is the first sign that may be starting to happen, though it won't yet be reflected in queues.
Last question on fuel. You suggested the fact that there are shortages across Europe. There are shortages in drivers in America. None of these countries are having the same level of effect that it is in the UK. Why is that the case if this is nothing to do with Brexit or drivers leaving? Everyone's experienced the pandemic. Everybody already has existing shortfalls. Why is it the UK is experiencing this more than other countries?
Well, coronavirus has certainly created a big shortage. We weren't able to test 30,000 lorry drivers, and that's had an impact. The system was coping, and the difficulty with any of these things is as soon as somebody gets an idea, for example, buy pasta at the beginning of the coronavirus, and then that turns into a stampede, there's almost nothing you can do with the supply system to prevent it. Having said that, there's only a finite amount of space in fuel tanks. We've taken 18 different steps, of which prepping the army is the latest, and we're starting to see just the first signs of stabilisation, which won't yet be reflected in the queues, but is in the percentage of fuel now available in the underground storage in the actual petrol stations itself. So this reflects itself in different ways in different markets. Brexit, I hear mentioned a lot, and it no doubt will have been a factor. On the other hand, it's actually helped us to change rules to be able to test more drivers more quickly, flexibilities that we've received by coming outside of the EU and being able to change the law. So it's actually worked in both ways. The sooner we all return to our normal buying habits, the quicker this gets resolved. And I do appeal to the public to do that. In particular, no more water bottles to petrol stations. It's dangerous and unhelpful.